Hello friends, let's continue to observe what's happening in sunny Poland. We have alarming police statistics, a conservative standoff over civil rights, Karol Nawrocki has really outdone himself, and there are restless ghosts of our shared history. Why does flirting with radical rhetoric always undermine internal stability, and how does diplomacy try to navigate between the past and the future? Let's figure it out. Please give us a like and subscribe to the channel right now, friends. Like to support aerodynamics, to support the working class. Huge thanks to everyone who doesn't hold back. Simple actions take just 2 seconds, and now let's get down to business. Part 1. Statistics, right? Statistics are like a mirror of rhetoric. Let's start with some tough, tangible numbers. The numbers come from the main command of the Polish police, which were recently published by the newspaper Rzeczpospolita. The picture that emerges there is, let's be honest, not a happy one, at least in my opinion, both for Poles and for Ukrainians. In the first 6 months of 2026, law enforcement recorded already 180 reports of offenses based on nationality. That means every day someone files a report, yes, concerning Ukrainians living in the country. So that's only what's actually reported when people actually get themselves together and go to the police. Just so you understand the dynamics. For the entire year 24, there were 267 such reports, and in 25 there were 275. The forecast for this year, if the current pace continues, is closer to 400. That means an increase of more than 30% in just 1 year. Yes, the police reasonably clarify that we're talking about filed reports, not crimes proven in court. But in my opinion, the overall trend is obvious to the naked eye. Where does this come from? As usual, it comes from television and from the political podium. Society is a rather inert thing, but extremely sensitive to signals from above. Remember the 2022, right? An unprecedented level of solidarity. Thank you very much to our Polish brothers. But the laws of social psychology still apply. The initial emotional surge has passed, and now the economic routine has set in. And on top of that, the politicians decided to pour fuel on the fire, right? They fueled public discontent and are preparing for the elections. PIS wants to return to power. And of course, it's no coincidence when the right-wing comrade Grzegorz Braun publicly declares that the Kyiv regime is the most corrupt and deadly for its own citizens in the history of Europe. And the former Minister of Education, who is aiming to become Prime Minister, Przemysław Czarnek, demands to cut off the funding. Apparently, he wants to fight the Russians himself. Why do we care about Ukraine, for God's sake? Some kind of shield. Ah, I see. And he says, that's it, we're cutting off funding until our neighbor adopts humane values. This isn't just empty talk. This is a direct green light for a certain part of the electorate, because they have a lot of citizens with unstable psyches, or just a lack of education. They listen to this and think, oh, the guy in the suit says they're bad, so I can go and restore order in the neighborhood. And here we are reading about it, yes. Those who are subscribed to the channel know, and in Bielsko-Biała, a 50-year-old man attacks a 12-year-old girl shouting, "Go the hell back to Ukraine." In Poznan, patriots storm a legal aid office. In Wrocław, Warsaw, there is violence, fractured skulls. It's sad, and Professor of Criminology Bruno Hall correctly points out that as soon as the elites start broadcasting selective aggression, the street element perceives it as a call to action. This is a classic example of how irresponsible political populism instantly turns into ordinary crime at the local level, or maybe that's really just their plan. And for them, everything is going exactly according to plan. Write in the comments what you think. Have you noticed an increase in tensions or not? Next, we have the second part of our ballet, the Constitution versus everyday life. Karol Nawrocki will put up a presidential roadblock for 3 million people, and these are Poles, not Ukrainians. While people are sorting out national identity in the streets, shouting "Get out," a drama is unfolding quietly in Warsaw offices around what is commonly called traditional values. The president of Poland, the legendary Karol Nawrocki, at the very last moment went to bed and vetoed the law on the status of a close person. What kind of document is this? Here it is. This is a legal document, a compromise that the authors of the New Left, led by Ms. Katarzyna Katula, are trying to push through. In short, it doesn't even come close to full civil partnerships. God forbid, of course, we disapprove. That's quite an idea they've come up with. Actually, no, I'm completely tolerant of this. So, the law simply proposed to give people who live in unregistered relationships, let me repeat, people living in unregistered relationships. There are, by the way, 3 million such people in Poland. These are just basic legal tools. For example, what should people be given? The ability to officially find out in a hospital whether your partner is alive and what is happening to them. The right to make decisions about burial. Minimal tax benefits and notarial guarantees. In general, in my opinion, this is just a practical streamlining of everyday life for those who haven't made it to the church or the registry office. But President Nawrocki saw this as an existential threat and says, have you read our wonderful constitution? There's Article 18. It says in black and white, or rather in Polish and white, that marriage is a union between a man and a woman. He says that the law creates an alternative to marriage and undermines the foundations of society through the back door. If you know what I mean, the left, of course, is furious. Katula stated that the president lacked the courage and betrayed his own campaign promises. And by the way, that's true. Well, my God, so he made a promise. So what now? What have they come up with now? My word is mine to give and mine to take back. That's it. And LGBT organizations like Miłość Nie Wyklucza consider this bill to be a neutered remnant that was laughable to defend in the first place. Editing was even harder. The authors got offended and said there'd be no second attempt. Since the project can't be shortened more, they'll try a different approach. Well, look, the logic here is exactly the same as in the first news story. In a situation where the right-wing camp is losing ground or trying to consolidate conservative voters, defending traditional values becomes the main shield and sword. And it doesn't matter that around 3 million people here can't get information about their partner's health without a power of attorney. The main thing is to demonstrate loyalty to the dogma. It's the same political game of holding on to power, where the real interests of some people, my God, we sacrifice them to ideology and slogans. Why do we even need these people? They must have been invented. Well, in general, there's a bit of a scandal here in Poland about, yes, King Nawrocki's veto. Part 3, Dasha, which Dasha? Who is Dasha? Write in the comments, do you know anyone named Dasha? Why did I remember her part 3 of our moralizing ballet? Graves, archives, and diplomacy. See, not everything is so hopeless in the Polish kingdom. If domestically we see things tightening up, a rise in xenophobia, then on the external front, suddenly there's, well, it's a bit much to call it a breakthrough, but there's some progress, right? We're talking about the eternal pain of Polish-Ukrainian relations, issues of historical memory and the exhumation of victims, what happened in Volhynia, and all the related conflicts in the 1940s. The Ukrainian ambassador, Vasyl Bodnar, said Kiev has applied to the Polish Institute of National Remembrance to conduct searches in the village of Leszków. This is not far from Sakrin, where in the spring of 1944 units of the Home Army and the peasant battalions, to put it mildly, treated the local Ukrainian population harshly. Ukrainian specialists can start digging in August. We're just waiting for approval. Here's the most interesting part. For a long time, this topic was used for tough blackmail. You don't let us exhume Poles in Volhynia, and we don't let you exhume Ukrainians in Poland. But now Bodnar emphasizes that Ukraine no longer ties its decisions to Poland's actions. Moreover, the Ukrainian side has issued a bunch of permits over the past 2 years. Write this down, dear patriots. Puzhniki, Lviv, Uli, Huta, Peniatska. In the village of Wolia Ostrovecka, exhumation is in full swing right now. They found the remains of 9 people who died in 1943. Volodymyr Alexandrovich Zelensky went further, promising to open all SBU and Foreign Intelligence Service archives on Volhynia's 20th century tragedies. Donald Tusk, our legendary Donny, warmly welcomed this decision and declared his readiness for a serious and friendly dialogue. Well, friends, you might ask me, Denchik, why is this being done? Well, this is being done because, unlike the radical street shouters, there are people in the government who can at least think a couple of steps ahead. Well, and I hope that Tusk and Zelensky understand perfectly well that if they don't remove this rusty historical splinter from the collective unconscious of the two nations now, it will definitely keep being picked at in the future, to be used by external forces or internal populists like the already mentioned comrades. Historical institutes, finally, well, I really hope they've learned to handle things directly, bypassing cumbersome bureaucracy. So, a Ukrainian company is hired, a smaller Narodowy institute commissions the work, the ministry approves it, and the process gets underway. Well, let's hope that pragmatism will overcome these historical grievances, because, come on, it's already 2026. Security requires real alliance, not endless arguments about whose monument in Sakrin or Volhynia is right or wrong. Well, and how people change, and by the way, in my opinion, Kuchma and Kwasniewski had a very warm relationship. I recently rewatched their meeting at the anniversary in Volhynia, and their interaction was very warm. It seems like the issue is forgotten, but no, the time has come. And what else? What else? The economy. Who cares about it, honestly? It's easier to shout louder, Volhynia, Volhynia, Bandera, and that's it. You'll win the elections. Yes. By the way, let me remind you that in the Soviet Union, the victory parade was held, I think, only on anniversaries, maybe 3 or 5 times in total. I honestly don't remember now. I didn't prepare for this question, but it was held very rarely. And when the darkest one came to power, this victory parade started happening every year. Doesn't that remind you of anything? Not to me, no. All right, friends, so where does that leave us? Polish society is facing a typical crisis of growth and adaptation. On one hand, we see a dangerous rise in xenophobia on the streets, fueled by all sorts of irresponsible statements from right-wing radicals. A conservative deadlock at the top, which blocks basic civil rights. Well, on the other hand, in the face of global challenges, the state apparatus is capable of showing remarkable flexibility and maturity, as in the case of breaking the deadlock on the most difficult historical issues. The main lesson here is simple. The ghosts of the past can only be defeated by open archives, honest work by archaeologists, and honest dialogue among historians. But if we continue to feed street aggression with populist slogans for the sake of elections in a year, and we still have a very interesting year ahead, then no constitution will protect the country from internal division. That's the news, friends. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones. A big shout out to the working class. Write the city where you watched until the end. It's important right now. That's all. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones. See you next time.